There you are. Come in, come in. The wind's a little chilly tonight, but there's warm tea in the pot, and the fire's humming its old tune. Grandpa's been waiting just for you. You've done so well today, and now it's time to rest. So close your eyes and let Grandpa take you far, far away. Once, in a forest that never quite slept, there lived a small red fox named Luma. She was clever, kind, and curious, but above all she was gentle, the kind of creature who helped birds build nests and let beetles crawl on her nose just to hear them hum. Every night, Luma would climb her favorite hill and watch the stars. She didn't wish on them. She worried for them. You see, Luma had noticed something no one else seemed to. The sky was thinning. Bit by bit, stars were going out, not falling, not crashing, just vanishing, as if someone were plucking them one by one from the blanket of night. The first time she saw it, she thought it was her eyes, but by the fifth night, even the constellations were losing their stories. She climbed the hill and whispered up, "Where are you going?" No one answered. The moon heard her, but stayed quiet. The wind kissed her ear, but said nothing. Only the trees, old and wise, rustled gently. Maybe the stars are tired. But Luma didn't believe that. She felt something else, something wrong. And so, one night, she packed a small satchel, a spool of silver thread just in case, a jar of fireflies for courage, and a single seed, smooth and warm, gifted long ago by a dream she couldn't quite remember. Then she looked up the vanishing sky and made a decision. "If the stars are leaving," she said, "then I will grow new ones." And so began her journey, not to chase the stars that were lost, but to plant new ones where hope had gone dark. Luma padded through the forest, her satchel bouncing gently at her side. The path ahead was quiet, but not empty. The trees leaned close, curious. The earth beneath her paws felt awake somehow, like it too had been waiting for someone brave enough to ask where the stars had gone. As she reached the edge of the woods, night fell fully, but it didn't scare her. She had fireflies, after all. She opened the jar. Tiny golden lights rose from it and danced around her fur like floating wishes. They didn't fly far, just enough to light her path and whisper their soft, buzzing songs. That's when she saw them, high in the branches above, lantern moths. Have you ever heard of them? They're rare, old creatures, not moths made of paper or light, but of memory. They glow with the warmth of the dreams people almost forgot, the dreams they left on shelves or buried under sighs. And tonight, the lantern moths were blinking frantically. One by one, they were dimming. Luma climbed carefully up a tree, branch by creaky branch, until she reached the nest of the moths. "Why are you fading?" she asked gently. One tiny moth, barely glowing, fluttered onto her paw. Its voice was like a whisper in a lullaby. "The stars feed us," it said, "and without them, we forget how to shine." Luma's heart sank. She knew then it wasn't just the sky that was growing dark. It was everything the stars touched, the dreams, the stories, the gentle little lights that kept people brave in the night. "Wait here," Luma said. "I have something." She opened her satchel, and from its folds she took out the seed. It had grown warmer, like it had been listening. She held it close to the moth. The seed gave off a tiny pulse of silver light just once, but the moth shivered and blinked, and for a single, perfect moment, it glowed again. The other moths watched. They fluttered closer, not afraid. Hope is contagious. Luma looked up at the hole in the sky, the place where stars used to be. This seed is a beginning, she whispered, but I need more, something to plant it in. The moths all turned at once, as if hearing something she couldn't, and then, without a word, they flew off, hundreds of them, forming a glowing ribbon across the night, guiding her deeper into the forest, to where the star garden used to grow. The lantern moths led Luma through the heart of the forest. They glowed like soft, floating stars, weaving between the branches and casting warm light across her path. The trees bowed as she passed, recognizing something ancient in her steps, something that hadn't stirred in many seasons. After a long walk through hush and moss and memory, the trees parted, and she saw it, the star garden. But oh, dear one, it was nothing like she imagined. Where once there had been radiant vines and glowing blossoms, now there was only dust, cracked soil, wilted roots, no shimmer, no bloom. It was a place that had forgotten how to hope. Luma stepped gently into the clearing. Even the air was still here, like the wind didn't dare breathe. She knelt and pressed her paw to the ground. Cold, dry, lonely. The lantern moths fluttered around her, confused. Their wings dimmed. A few landed gently on the sleeping plants as if trying to wake them. "This was once where the stars were born," whispered one tiny moth. "But no one tended it anymore." Luma's ears drooped. Even the seed in her satchel felt quiet now, unsure perhaps. But then something caught her eye, a single sprout, so small, so shy, it barely reached above the soil, but it was alive. And more than that, it glowed, just the faintest little twinkle. Luma knelt beside it. "You held on," she whispered. The sprout didn't answer, of course, but the ground under it felt warm. She gently dug a hole beside it, careful, steady, and there she planted her seed, the one that had been sleeping, the one gifted by a dream she could barely remember. The lantern moths gathered in a circle. They didn't sing, not with their voices, but their light began to hum, vibrating softly in the air, and as their glow touched the soil, the seed pulsed, once, twice, and then roots. Tiny glowing tendrils reached down, curling into the earth like they were remembering how to grow. A stem stretched up, and at its tip, a bud, round, bright, a starberry. It bloomed open like a sunrise, and the light from it rose gently into the air, floating, weightless, soft as a sigh, and drifted upward, toward the hole in the sky. Luma and the moths watched. It wasn't a star, not yet, but it was the beginning. The first starberry had bloomed. Luma sat beside it, paws tucked beneath her, watching its light float softly into the sky. It didn't rush. It wasn't loud, just peaceful, like it knew exactly where it belonged. The lantern moths circled above, glowing brighter than before. They weren't fading now, not while hope had returned to the garden. But one small moth drifted down to Luma's shoulder and spoke quietly. "One is not enough." Luma nodded. She knew. One seed might start the song, but a whole sky needed a chorus. "Where can I find more seeds?" she asked. The moth's wings flickered like candlelight. "You won't find them above ground," it whispered. "You must go deeper, beneath, where memory sleeps." And then, before Luma could ask another word, the moth flew upward and vanished into the dark canopy. The garden was still. Luma looked to the soil beneath the glowing plant. Her paws trembled just slightly. "All right," she whispered. "Let's go deeper." She began to dig, not fast, not frantic. She was careful. Software. She knew the roots remembered more than the trees did. And sure enough, The soil changed. At first it was just dirt, but soon it became something else. Thicker, almost golden, filled with tiny sparkling grains that hummed when touched. Luma blinked. She was digging into old stories, forgotten ones, the kind that once made the stars smile. And then she heard it, a low voice, not loud, not scary, just deep, like thunder buried in velvet. Who scratches at my memory? Luma froze, but then steadied herself. My name's Luma, she said. I want to help the sky shine again. The ground beneath her shifted gently. A warm breath passed through the roots. Many have forgotten me, said the voice. I was the first gardener, the one who sang to the seeds before the stars were born. Luma's eyes widened. You're the root whisperer. The soil chuckled. Software ancient. So they still remember that name? She nodded. Will you help me? The roots around her quivered, then slowly parted, revealing a hidden chamber beneath the garden. Inside it glowed dozens of tiny star seeds, each one floating, pulsing faintly. The root whisperer spoke. They need a voice, a new song, someone to wake them with kindness. Then I will sing, Luma said, and she did. Right there in the earth's warm belly, she began to hum a lullaby, one her mother used to sing, a melody of soft nights and glowing skies. The seeds stirred. One by one, they opened like sleepy eyes, blinking awake after a long dream. The whisperer smiled, unseen but felt. Take them, little fox. Plant them where hope has gone dim. Luma climbed out from the underground chamber with the star seeds tucked carefully in a bundle of moss. They glowed gently, pale blue, gold, soft lavender, each one a heartbeat of hope wrapped in silence. The lantern moths circled her like quiet guardians, their light steadier than ever now. I'll plant them where the sky has forgotten to shine, Luma whispered. She stepped out of the garden, but the forest had changed. The air was heavier, the trees leaned close, their branches tense, and something was missing. The wind, it had stopped. No rustle, no whisper, no breeze to guide her fur. Just stillness. Then she heard it, a click like claws against bark. Luma crouched low. The moths dimmed. From the shadows of an ancient split tree ahead stepped a creature cloaked in ash. His eyes were empty sockets filled with smoke, and on its back hung a heavy, tattered sack that pulsed with faint light. A star thief. Not a monster, not exactly, but a being born when wishes are made and then forgotten. When people stop believing and leave their dreams behind like shoes too small. It saw the seeds on Luma's back and froze. Those do not belong to you, it hissed. Luma stood tall even though her legs trembled. They belong to the sky. The star thief crept closer, its claws leaving cold marks in the soil. The sky no longer wants them, but I do. I feed on what's left behind. One of the seeds twitched, sensing the thief's presence. The thief lunged, but just as it reached for her, flash! The lantern moths exploded into brilliant light, blinding the forest in a wash of gold. The star thief screamed, not in pain, but in fear. It retreated into the hollow of the old tree, hissing as it vanished into the dark. The moths dimmed again, forming a circle of safety around Luma. She gasped for breath. Then she noticed something. From the place where the thief had stood, a tiny star fragment lay in the dirt. Cold, dimensions, forgotten. Luma picked it up, and it pulsed faintly in her paw. Not dead, just waiting to be remembered. Even stolen stars want to shine again, she whispered. She tucked it into her satchel alongside the seeds and walked on. toward the first place in the sky that had gone dark long ago, a hill no one climbed anymore, a place where people stopped wishing. Luma walked beneath silent trees, the sky above her still dark and empty, but in her satchel the star seeds glowed like fireflies caught in a song. She followed the winding trail until the woods gave way to open land, and there it stood, the hill of forgotten wishes. It wasn't a grand hill, just a quiet rise covered in tall, waving grass. Once, long ago, children had climbed it, closing their eyes and blowing dandelion puffs into the wind, whispering wishes as soft as feathers, but not anymore. Now the grass grew wild. The stones were cracked. The wind carried no laughter, no secrets, just silence. Luma padded slowly to the top, feeling the weight of the sky pressing down on her. At the summit, she sat and opened the satchel. The star seeds pulsed softly, each with its own rhythm, some fast like excited hearts, others slow and sleepy. She reached into the moss and chose the seed that glowed palest blue, gentle, hopeful. "This is the place," she said aloud. "This is where you'll grow." She dug a small hole with her paws, placed the seed inside, and covered it carefully. Then, remembering what the root whisperer had told her, she began to hum, the same lullaby. But tonight it felt different. She wasn't just humming for the stars. She was singing for the wishes that had been left behind. And as her song filled the air, the grass began to shimmer. Tiny lights blinked open one by one, dandelion ghosts perhaps, wishes that had never made it to the sky. They spun around her in circles, whispering their forgotten dreams. "I wish to be brave. I wish my mother would come home. I wish I could fly. I wish I hadn't let go." The seed in the soil trembled. Its light brightened, and from the ground a stem unfurled, delicate and silver, crowned with a bloom shaped like a star made of glass. The petals opened wide, and from its center a single drop of starlight lifted into the air, then floated skyward. Luma watched, breath held, and in the sky above something stirred, a pinprick of light, tiny, far. But there, a single star had returned. The hill of forgotten wishes had remembered its purpose, and the wind began to blow again, not harsh, just enough to lift Luma's fur and carry her song farther than she could ever run. She looked at the rest of the seeds. "One down," she whispered, "and many skies to go." With one seed planted and a star returned to the sky, Luma felt lighter, but her satchel was still full, and the night was still wide. The lantern moths led her onward, their lights weaving like threads between trees and over hills. The path curved gently until it opened up into a silver glade, where the trees gave way to water. Still, smooth, endless. It was the Mirror Lake. The surface was so perfectly calm it reflected the sky above like glass, but the sky above was still missing its stars, so the lake, too, was empty, dark, waiting. Luma stepped to the edge. She could see herself reflected there, a little fox face, the satchel at her side, the sadness in her eyes that she hadn't noticed until just now. And then something moved, not in the water, but beneath it. Shapes flickered, not fish, not shadows, but memories. She saw a deer's first steps, a child learning to read by firelight, two hands being held before a long goodbye. The lake didn't reflect what was. It reflected what had been forgotten. And then she saw it, a memory that wasn't hers. A little girl sitting beside the lake, cupping a glowing star in her hands. She closed her eyes and whispered something into it before gently placing it on the water. It floated for a moment, and then it sank, vanished. "The lake is full of lost wishes," a moth whispered beside Luma, "but some are ready to rise again." Luma nodded slowly and reached into her satchel. This time, she chose a seed that flickered gold and white, like sunlight and clouds woven together. She stepped into the water, just enough to feel the cold nip at her paws. Then she placed the seed gently onto the surface. To her surprise, it didn't sink. It floated and began to glow brighter. Ripples moved outward, gentle as breath, and below the surface, the forgotten memories began to shimmer. The deer stood again. The child turned the page. The hands reached out once more, but this time they didn't say goodbye. The lake was remembering. The seed opened like a lily, and from its heart a ribbon of light rose upward. It pierced the sky like a silver arrow, and another star appeared, software round, warm. The lake caught its reflection. 2 stars now, one above, one below. Luma smiled. For the first time since she began, she smiled without sadness. The sky was changing, slowly, surely. "Thank you," she whispered to the lake, to the child's memory, to the night itself. She stepped back onto land, where the moths waited like friends who never left. There were more places to go, but for now, Luma lay beside the lake and watched the stars, 2, side by side, like company in the dark. Luma left the mirror lake behind as the second star flickered to life above. Her satchel felt lighter, not just because there were fewer seeds, but because something inside her had changed. She was no longer just planting stars. She was waking up the world. The lantern moths led her next to the edge of the whispering woods, where the trees stood in tight rows like guards who had long forgotten their purpose. But in the center of those woods, where no leaves ever fell, stood the oldest tree of them all, the tree that refused to sleep. Its bark was cracked, its branches bare, its roots spread wide and deep, like it had tried to hold the world together once and couldn't let go. Luma approached it slowly. There was no wind here, no birds, no breath, only silence. And then, as her paws touched the base of the tree, it spoke, not with words, but with feeling, a tired ache that reached into her chest. "Why do you carry stars?" it asked in a voice like creaking wood, "when the sky has forgotten how to look down?" Luma bowed her head. "Because someone must remember," she said, "and someone must plant what was lost." The tree was quiet for a long time. Then a low groan echoed through its roots. A single branch bent toward her, slow and heavy, revealing a hollow nook near its heart. Inside it glowed, a small gray seed, unlike the others. It didn't pulse, it didn't flicker, it waited. "This one," said the tree, "fell from the first sky, long before stars had names." Luma gently picked it up. It felt cool, quiet, but full of weight, like a memory never spoken aloud. She placed it in her satchel with the others, but as she turned to leave, the tree groaned again. "Will you plant it where no one looks?" it asked, "where the forgotten cannot be seen?" Luma nodded. Even the unseen deserve a light. And then something miraculous happened. The tree, which had been still for centuries, let loose one single leaf. It twirled down, gold and glowing, landing at Luma's paws. She tucked it gently behind her ear. A gift, a promise. She looked up at the tree. "You can rest now," she whispered. The wind stirred, software like a sigh, and in the sky above, a third star shimmered into view. Not bright, but steady, like a keeper of quiet things. Luma walked through the hush of the whispering woods, the golden leaf from the ancient tree still tucked behind her ear. The forest faded behind her, and the ground began to rise beneath her paws. Gentle at first, then steeper, steeper still. Before her towered the mountain that never forgot. It was said to be the first place the stars ever touched the earth, and the last place they would return. Its peak was always shrouded in mist, and its cliffs were etched with stories, markings carved by wind, paw, claw, and time. No one climbed it anymore, except Luma. The lantern moths struggled in the thin air, but they stayed with her, flickering like shy hope. Every step was slow, heavy, not because her body was tired though it was, but because something in the air remembered everything. Each footfall echoed old whispers. You'll never reach the top. Why bother with stars when the world sleeps? You're just a fox, a small, soft thing. Luma's ears flattened, but she didn't stop. She remembered the hill of forgotten wishes, the mirror lake, the ancient tree's golden leaf. She remembered the sky changing. She remembered why she climbed. At last, breathless and trembling, she reached the summit and gasped, not from the cold, not from the height, but from what she saw. The sky. It was waking. The 3 stars she had planted now hung above the world like shy beacons. And the 4th, an empty place in the sky, it pulsed faintly like it was waiting for her. She opened her satchel. There, nestled in moss, was the seed the old tree had given her, the first star's memory. It was still gray, still cool, still silent. But as she held it up to the wind, it began to hum. A low, ancient sound, not music, not words, but the memory of light. She placed the seed on the stone at the mountain's peak and waited. Nothing happened. Then, a crack. The stone split, not in anger, but like an old heart breaking open. The seed sank gently into the crack. The mountain glowed, faint at first, then strong. Light poured from the summit, down the cliffs, across the valleys, through the woods, and all the way to the edge of the mirror lake. And in the sky above, the 4th star ignited, bright, golden, bold. Luma sat, overwhelmed, not with exhaustion, but with joy. She had planted 4 stars. She had brought the sky halfway back, and from the light came something else. A shadow rose from the mountain mist, not dark and cold, but shaped like a fox, tall and glowing, made entirely of starlight. It bowed to her, not as a god, not as a ruler, but as an equal, a friend, a guardian of life. It said nothing. It didn't need to. It simply walked beside her as she stood again, her eyes set on the horizon. There were still seeds to plant, still places, waiting for stars. And now she would not walk alone. Luma stood atop the mountain that never forgot, her fur kissed by starlight, the silent guardian of light by her side. 4 stars now watched from the sky, each one planted with love, each one blooming in darkness, but her satchel was not yet empty. There was 1 seed left, only 1, and Luma knew this one would not be planted in soil. It would be planted in choice. As she descended the mountain, the world around her shimmered. The trees she had passed once before now whispered again, but this time with gratitude. The mirror lake sparkled with 2 stars in its reflection. The hill of forgotten wishes now bloomed with gentle lights. Each wish once lost, now remembered. And at the edge of it all stood the little fox, small and golden, still holding the last seed. But something was different now. She was not tired. She was whole. At the heart of the valley, where the sky met the earth, where no map drew roads and no path had names, she stopped. The stars above were clearer now, but the sky, It still had room. Luma held the last seed up to the air. It shimmered, brightest of them all. It pulsed like a heartbeat, and then softly it spoke, not in words, but in feeling, a choice. This seed, it said, can light the sky forever, or return to the heart of the one who carries it. Luma blinked, a star for the world, or a light for her soul, and the world grew quiet. The wind hushed. Even the moths stopped. What would she choose? She looked to the sky, to the stars she had planted, and then she looked at the hills, the lakes, the forests, the places that had awakened because of her. She smiled. The sky will always need one more light, she whispered. She knelt to the earth, paws gentle, and she planted the final seed. No humming this time, no ancient song, just stillness, a quiet promise. The ground held the seed close, and then, boom, not a sound, a bloom, a surge of golden light that wrapped the valley in warmth, brighter than fire, softer than breath. It rushed upward, curling into the heavens like a ribbon of dawn. And in the sky, the fifth star appeared, the brightest, the heart of the sky. The fox made of light stood beside Luma once more. It looked at her with eyes full of peace, and then, like dust rising in a sunbeam, it faded into the stars. Luma stood alone, but not lonely. The satchel was empty. Her heart was full. The world was different now, and as she turned to walk home, the stars above her followed, watching, guarding, glowing. Story 2. There once was a village where the wind never blew, not even a breeze. The trees stood stiff and still, the grass never danced, and the clothes on the lines hung as if frozen in time. The village was small, nestled in a green bowl of hills, where the sky stretched wide but never moved. It had been this way for so long that no one remembered wind at all, except for one little boy named Toma. Toma was quiet, gentle. He liked to sit under the oldest tree in the village square, close his eyes, and imagine what wind might feel like. He had never felt it on his cheeks, never heard it through the leaves, never chased it with a kite. But he dreamed of it. Oh, how he dreamed of it. And every night he whispered to the sky before falling asleep, "Please send the wind, just once, so I can feel the world breathe." The grown-ups in the village would laugh kindly when they heard him. "Silly boy," they'd say, "the wind left long ago. We learned to live without it." But Toma didn't stop hoping. One morning he woke before the sun. The village was still asleep. The sky was pale and soft, like a sleepy blanket pulled over the world. Toma sat by the old tree and closed his eyes again. But this time he heard something, a whisper, so faint he thought it was his own breath. He opened his eyes and looked around. Nothing moved, nothing changed. But then he saw something strange, a single feather, white and clean, floating, just a little, spinning, swaying, and then it touched his hand. "Hello?" he whispered, unsure whether to be excited or scared. The feather twitched, then lifted again, higher this time, and it drifted off toward the hills. Toma stood quickly. His heart was racing. Could it be? Could the wind be returning? Without waiting to tell anyone, he followed the feather, out of the square, past the houses, beyond the fields, into the hills. He didn't know where it was leading him. He didn't know what he would find, but he knew something had changed. For the first time in 100 years, something had moved, and deep inside the hills, past the still grass and the silent trees, the wind was waking. Toma climbed higher into the hills than he ever had before. The white feather drifted ahead of him. not quickly, but purposefully, as if it remembered a road long forgotten. The grass beneath his feet felt cooler now, the silence thicker. The air was different, not wind, not yet, but expectant, like the world was holding its breath. He followed the feather into a narrow valley where the hills dipped inward and circled a smooth stone wall half covered in moss and vine. It was there that he saw it, a door, not wood, not metal, but made of wind-smooth stone, with carvings of swirling lines, rising birds, and open hands. At the center was a mark shaped like a spiral cloud, and beneath it a small hollow, just the size of a feather. Toma looked at the feather, still drifting before him. "You want me to place you there?" he whispered. The feather dipped gently like a nod. With a breath held tight in his chest, Toma stepped forward. He reached out, heart pounding, and set the feather into the hollow. For a moment, nothing, then whoosh. The vines quivered, the stone groaned, the air around him shifted, not like wind, not yet, but like a beginning. The door creaked open a crack. A soft whisper spilled out, not a voice, not words, but sounds like faraway winds, leaves rustling in dreams, kites flying in memories. Toma stepped through the crack, and what he saw inside stole the very breath from his chest. It was a chamber, vast and quiet, lit from somewhere deep within the stone walls, and in its center floated a glowing orb the size of a pumpkin, spinning ever so gently in the air. Around it drifted feathers, leaves, and threads of cloud. Toma stepped forward slowly. He could feel it. This was the heart of wind. It wasn't dead, just asleep. He reached out a hand. Warmth brushed his skin, tingling, alive, ancient, and then the orb pulsed. Once, twice, boom! A rush of air swirled around him. Dust lifted from the stones. A curtain of cobwebs danced. Toma laughed, startled by the sound of movement. "I found you," he whispered, and in return the orb pulsed again. Software kind, awake. The heart of wind had heard his call. Toma stood before the glowing orb, the heart of wind, still spinning gently in the quiet chamber. The air now moved around him in soft curls, like a stream of breath that had just remembered how to flow. It wasn't loud, not yet, but it was there, alive. The orb pulsed again, and this time Toma heard something, a sound like voices, but not quite voices. They were memories. "I was once a breeze across the sea. I carried kites over rooftops and spun the hats off laughing at children. I danced with leaves in the arms of autumn, and I cooled the cheeks of lovers beneath the stars." Toma listened, eyes wide. The wind was speaking, not in one voice, but in many. Old winds. Winds that had been trapped, waiting to be remembered, waiting for him. Suddenly, the chamber changed. The smooth stone walls shimmered, then peeled back like curtains in a breeze. Toma gasped. The chamber was no longer underground. It opened into a great sky, but not the sky of his village. This sky swirled with colors he couldn't name. Clouds shaped like birds flew backwards. Hills floated. The wind played here like a child, wild and laughing. A wind world, and at its heart was a path made of woven threads of air and feather leading into the distance. The glowing orb nudged Toma gently with its pulse. "Walk the path," it seemed to say. "There is more to wait." Toma hesitated, but only for a moment. He stepped onto the wind path, and the world shifted beneath him, not down, not up, but through. Suddenly, he was standing on the rooftop of his own village. But it was different. The houses were covered in vines. The sky above was gray and unmoving. No birds, no clouds, no sounds, just stillness. And Toma realized this was not now. It was before, a memory, a time when the wind left. He walked through the village square. No one noticed him. They were frozen in the memory. He saw a younger version of the old tree. He saw the people gathered around something, a crack in the sky. No, a shimmer, and from it the wind was being pulled away, like water from a draining well. Toma watched as the sky stiffened, the breeze died, and silence fell like a closing door. "Why did the wind leave?" he whispered. The world didn't answer, but the orb glowed at his side, and the wind path returned. He stepped onto it again. There were more memories to find, more winds to wait. The sky that forgot to breathe. Toma walked the wind path again, the glowing orb beside him like a quiet heartbeat. Each step carried him deeper through forgotten skies. Clouds moved in slow spirals above, like old stories waiting to be retold. Feathers drifted upward instead of down. The path beneath his feet shimmered, woven from currents and sighs. And then he arrived. A new place, not a memory, not quite a dream, but something in between. He stood at the edge of a vast plain made of still air. No hills, no sound, just silence that stretched forever. In the middle of the plain was a mirror, enormous, floating, spinning slowly. Its surface rippled, not with water, but with the reflections of winds that had vanished. He saw gusts playing with scarves. He saw sandstorms over red deserts. He saw blizzards tumbling through mountains, and then he saw himself, Toma, but older, wiser, with eyes full of wind. The mirror spoke, not in voice, but in breath. To wake the wind, you must give it reason to return. Toma furrowed his brow. "What does that mean?" he whispered. "The wind does not move for noise. It moves for meaning, for dreams, for stories." Toma touched the mirror. Suddenly he was falling, not down, but into a memory that wasn't his. He was in a village that had wind. Children ran with ribbons in the air. Grandmothers aired blankets. Musicians played flutes whose songs flew for miles. And in the sky, kites danced like birds made of cloth and joy. Toma smiled. His heart ached. This is what his home had lost. Not just breeze, but laughter, movement, song. Then the sky darkened. The wind stilled. The people looked up, fear in their eyes. The wind was being taken, sealed, bound by something or someone deep within the mountain. Toma gasped. A figure cloaked in stillness, faceless and cold, stood atop the hills, pulling the wind into a vessel made of glass and silence. The people begged, but the wind was locked away forever. And just like that, Toma was back, standing before the mirror. The orb hovered beside him, pulsing softly. "You saw it," the mirror breathed. "Now you know what must be undone." Toma nodded slowly. "I have to find that vessel," he whispered, "and break it." The mirror shimmered, and the wind path opened again. This time, it led toward a shadowed mountain in the distance. Toma took a breath and stepped forward, into the place where the wind had been stolen. The Mountain of Silence. The wind path narrowed as it neared the mountain. No birds flew here, no trees stood, just cold, unmoving stone, gray as forgotten dreams. Toma walked alone, the glowing orb still beside him, pulsing like a lantern made of breath. The silence grew deeper the higher he climbed, not peaceful, but heavy, as if the world itself had stopped breathing. At the summit stood a towering archway, cracked and weathered, carved with old symbols, the same swirls and feathers he had seen on the chamber door long ago. Beyond the archway, a dark hall of stillness. At the end of that hall sat the vessel of silence, clear, glass, cold. Inside it swirled 100 kinds of wind, trapped and turning slowly, like dancers locked in slow motion. And before the vessel stood the figure he had seen in the memory, the keeper of stillness, tall, faceless, wrapped in a cloak made of silence itself. Toma stepped forward. "You took the wind," he said softly. "Why?" The keeper did not move, but Toma felt the answer, not in words, but in feeling. Long ago the world had grown too loud, too angry, too fast, and the keeper, born of silence, had locked the wind away to protect it, but in doing so, he had taken the joy with it, the dance, the music, the breath of the world. Toma stepped closer. "It's time," he whispered. "The world is ready to breathe again." The glowing orb floated between them. It pulsed brightly, then gently pressed itself into the glass of the vessel. Crack! A tiny fracture appeared. The keeper watched, still silent, but he did not stop Toma. Crack! Crack! The orb pulsed again. Toma placed both hands on the vessel and breathed a deep, honest, hopeful breath. The vessel shattered, and with it came the sound of wind, real wind, free wind. It burst into the sky. It circled the mountain. It howled with joy. It ran laughing into the valleys below. Back in the village, clothes on the lines fluttered. The leaves rustled in the old tree. A child's kite soared above the rooftops, and the people lifted their faces to feel the first true breeze in 100 years. Toma stood at the peak, his hair dancing in the rushing air. The keeper was gone. Only a feather remained, white, still drifting. Toma smiled and closed his eyes. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The world was breathing again, and in the wind it whispered back, "Thank you, little boy." Ah, and now, my little dreamer, the story is done. The wind has returned. The village sleeps beneath its gentle hush. And you may rest too. Let your dreams ride the breeze, soft and slow, wherever your heart needs to go. Good night. Grandpa loves you.